What's going on, everyone? It's Patriot Underground. Today is Friday, June 11th, 2021. Thank you so much for joining me to discover the truth beneath the surface. So, today I'm going to be doing a coffee chat and I'm going to be staying stationary. So, for those of you who are new to the channel, I really love doing these coffee chat episodes where I drive around in my car and I share my thoughts and feelings and analysis and just kind of do a free flow of ideas and share it with the audience. The only problem is that every time I drive around in my car, there's way too much background noise, and the audio just ends up terrible. So it's kind of one of those unfortunate situations because I feel like some of my analysis when I do those is really good, but then I've got the audio problem to deal with. So I'm gonna sit here and drink my coffee in the parking lot, and hopefully the background noise will be minimal, and you'll be able to hear me just fine without any distractions. So thank you so much for joining me, and I wanted to just mention that all of you who have been supporting the channel, the efforts that you've been putting into share awareness or spread awareness, I should say, about the broadcast have really been paying off. I started a channel on YouTube. What was it, 2 weeks ago now, I think, and already it's over 3,000 subscribers. And of course, BitChute has been doing great. Rumble and my following is starting to grow there, and Rumble is starting to get a little bit of traction there. So it's really exciting. Obviously, I have you, the audience, to thank for that, along with, of course, Gene Decode. It certainly helps when you've got a legend come on your show right off the bat to to spread awareness about your platform. So I mean, I have nothing but gratitude for that, and I'm a huge Gene Decode fan, and really it was just a dream come true for me to be able to even have a conversation with him one-on-one, let alone having him come on my broadcast. So now, he's been on twice, and we are going to have a third conversation, although we're not really sure when that's going to be because Gene's very busy during the summer with traveling, and his very busy schedule becomes even more limited. And so we're gonna try to schedule something, I think, for August. I'm not really sure when exactly, so I'm gonna be looking forward to that. And also, I was in touch with a representative of Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, who has also expressed interest in coming on the platform as well, which is obviously exciting news. Although she's booked solid until the fall, so we're going to be setting something up. I just don't know exactly when these are going to be, and I'm also working on setting up interviews with some other very high profile folks as well. I'm hoping that all of the pieces come together, and with God's help and with God's blessing, I'm sure that they will. So it's very, very exciting to be in this position. I've never really imagined, really even just a couple of months ago, if you had told me all that would transpire from the time that I started the podcast till now, I never would have believed it, which is just further evidence, or really further proof, I should say, in my mind, that this is what God wants me to be doing right now. And I believe not just me, but I believe all of us have a role to play. And I've talked about that a lot. I think that so much of the Great Awakening is going to be about people rediscovering, or perhaps discovering for the first time, their true potential and aligning their talents with God's purpose and God's will. Because ultimately, I do believe, as I've said many times, that God does bless us with many talents, but he also has expectations for how we use those talents and abilities. And, it's very, very important when you finally discover how to do that. It's very, very important to share that with people and to share, that experience. So for me, all of my life, I've really had a burning passion for justice and for truth. Doesn't mean that I'm a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination. I've led a life where I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done a lot of things in my life that I wish I could take back, or I wish had gone differently on one level. But I'm coming to understand now that I've believed that I've found my true calling and my true purpose. I'm beginning to understand now why so many of the things in my life transpired the way they did. Why God allowed certain things to happen in my life that were really, really painful and that I couldn't never really make sense of until now. Now I can see so much of what I went through was training for ultimately what God was going to, the office that he was going to have me step into. And I think that a lot of you, I mean, a lot of my listeners have shared similar feelings. And what I would say to people out there who are listening to this, who are like me, and the only difference between the two of us is that that I've taken the plunge and you haven't yet taken the plunge. All I would say to those people out there is, have faith. If you have the passion burning inside of you to do something and to be a voice or to become active in some way, it doesn't even mean that you have to have a podcast or put your voice out there, but just to become active. If you have the passion, that's God's prompting. That's God urging you and pushing you along to try to get you to align your talents and your passion with God's will for your life and his intention and his role and the way that he wants to use you in this period. And I think my audience, I think everybody out there in my audience understands the gravity and of the historical moment that we find ourselves in. But I think that as more and more unfolds, we're going to realize that even our conception of how important this moment in history is probably underestimating the reality of what's going to transpire. And I do believe, even though you guys know that I'm not into timelines, I do believe that we're getting closer and closer to more overt disclosure, to the point where the mainstream media is ultimately going to have to make a choice between are they going to cover the information that's going to come out, or are they going to ignore it, or are they going to try to use some sort of delay or distraction tactic? But we're getting very, very close, I believe, to the point where enough information is going to come out that the mainstream can no longer ignore it. And I think that's probably been the plan all along, is to have the information drip out on alternative media and have slow recognition of the public of what's out there. And then eventually there's going to be some sort of a big event. And I've talked a lot about and theorized about what that big event could be. And of course, a lot of people out there, a lot of internet commentators like myself have done the same thing. Of course, nobody really knows. Some people think it's going to be the audits. Like Gene said, it could be a Red Sea moment. It could be something that's, entirely unexpected. A lot of people anticipate that it's going to be the first arrest that's going to shock the world. But I just feel in my gut that we're getting closer and closer to that big event, because the holding pattern that we've been in is starting, I think, to really unravel in a lot of different ways, because I think that the patience of the Patriots, of course, is a factor here. And I think the White Hats are very well aware of it. Gene Decode talked a lot about, not on my show, but I've heard him talk about on other shows, that the American people aren't going to just sit on their hands forever. We're not going to wait forever, and that the alliance is aware of this. And they're also aware of the fact that if we get to, I think Gene said 2024, but I think even 2022. I mean, if we even get to the 2022 elections and we don't have fair and clean elections, I think this country is just going to start to completely unravel. And so I do think that there is a window here where the White Hats are really playing. It's a very delicate balance, because on the one hand, they understand the Patriots, but on the other hand, they also are approaching this whole situation in a way to artfully wake up the public, as we've talked about. And that's a very, very delicate balance in terms of how long this can actually go on. And we also know that there are still elements of the deep state that are very much active right now. And they haven't been completely rooted out. Now, from a military standpoint, my view is that the war has already been won. Doesn't mean that there aren't still battles going on, but ultimately I think that most of the military end of this conflict has been decided. I think that the White Hats, that the alliance have already won the war, and that really it's just about now awakening the public and figuring out the best way. Of course, they probably already gamed this out years ago, but for us who don't know the plan, it's kind of more. It feels more as if figuring out the best way to disclose all this information to the public. But there is a delicate balance. I mean, it can't go on forever. And now, as everybody knows, of course, we're well past 6 months since the election, and we're entering the summer. And I believe that a lot of things are going to transpire this summer. I think that I agree with what Simon Parks was talking about in his most recent interview, where he talked about how June is, and he's talked about this all along, how June would be kind of a runway. And that eventually, so that really means that, things are going to be speeding up until we ultimately get this aircraft off the ground to use the metaphor, I guess you could say, of the big reveal or the great awakening. So things are really, and also I think on a spiritual gut level, I think a lot of people in an intuitive level and on an energy level, all of us can feel the energy rising and we can feel the quickening happening. So even while we're frustrated with every day that goes by that we're not seeing more, I think folks are also understanding and feeling that the energy is building. And sooner or later, and I believe it's going to be sooner, we're going to experience a major event that's going to truly mark the beginning of the public's great awakening, a shock event. And when that happens, there's no telling how the public is going to react. I mean, of course, the White Hats, the alliance, a very small group of people who've already gamed this out and already been able to use the looking glass or the quantum computing systems that they have, they probably know how this is going to play out. But the rest of us, it's a complete mystery. How is the public going to react to this situation? I would imagine that there's probably going to be a lot of different reactions. I mean, when you think about just the people in your own life who are asleep right now, you know them very well, you love them. You probably have some idea of how they're going to react, but you probably don't even know the full scope of what they're going to experience when they realize that all the things that we've been saying this entire time have been true. And I think that there's going to be a lot of different folks out there who are going to react in different ways, of course. There are going to be people, I think, who are just going to be in shock to the point where they're just almost catatonic, where they just can't even, it's like they can't even function. It's like the bottom is just going to drop out for a lot of people. I think it could have a massive, it's going to have a massive effect on people's mental health. I think there are going to be people who are going to get violent, of course, who are going to react that way because the enormity of what's going to come out is going to be so big and so vast that they'd rather fight against it. Or perhaps they support the evil. There's going to be those, I'm sure, those factions as well. And I know that the White Hats already have a plan to deal with those types, like the Antifa types, the BLM, the uprisings that are very likely to occur, and probably it would be a miracle. It would be nothing short of a miracle if they didn't. But I know that they have plans for that. But the general public is going to be completely stunned, and the world is going to come to a grinding halt as all this information comes out. So I think we're getting closer. Of course, a lot of people out there talking about the fall, and Gene mentioned that during our interview. I've heard Simon talk about that, and who knows? I'm not going to sit here and postulate. They would obviously know far better than I would. But I do believe that it kind of makes sense in a way, I'm not going to get into, symbology or anything along those lines. I just think in terms of where the American public is at right now, where the Patriots are at versus where the American public is at, and the knowledge and all the revelations that are going to come out that are imminent. I just don't see how this charade could go on much longer. There's only so many delay tactics and so many cards that the deep state could play. Now, a lot of people have talked about how that, it's very possible in terms of the election audits that the deep state could say, well, or the media could say, well, we need to have a full investigation, a full audit, and so forth and so on, and use that as a delay tactic. That's very possible. It's also very possible that they could ignore or try to ignore the story altogether, which I think it was Simon who said, and I would agree that, if that's what they do, then the military at that point is going to have all that they need in terms of a justification to initiate the emergency broadcast system and essentially do a hostile takeover of the mainstream media. Because if they're not going to report this information, then clearly they are the enemy of the people, and they are essentially enemy combatants at that point. And that may be the plan. But there's only so much stalling and so much delaying, and really there's a limit to the patience of the American people who are awake. And that number, of course, is growing. And although I haven't had any personal experiences yet where anyone in my life has come up to me and said, hey, you were right, what else do you know? There is evidence. There's a lot of evidence out there that people are waking up. Gene went into a lot of the evidence. X22 on a daily basis really talks about a lot of the evidence that folks are waking up. But we know that the Alliance is monitoring the public's awareness, the public's level of awareness and consciousness, and that ultimately is the key. It really is. I think once we hit a certain point, a certain percentage, and I wish I could tell you what that percentage was. I tried to get that from Gene, and again, he's not privy to that information, or he's not able to divulge the information either way. But we have to assume that it has to be at least a majority of the American people. Maybe not a vast majority, but certainly has to be a majority before the military can step in and feel comfortable stepping in and being supported by the American people. And I think that we're getting very, very close to that. I really, really do. And we'll see over the next week or so what new information comes out. But it definitely looks as if we're getting closer and closer to this big event. All right, folks. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and hopefully you have a wonderful Friday and hopefully a wonderful weekend as well. I'll be back soon, God willing, with another report. And until then, God bless, Patriot.